through mental illness, mental health, and recovery. As we lift up those experiences, it seems fitting to reflect on the Japanese art of kintsugi with words from Leslie Crawford. Kintsugi translates as golden joinery, and it is a method of repairing broken ceramics with lacquer mixed with gold, silver, or platinum. The aim is not to hide the repairs, but to make them a feature, to incorporate them into a design often more beautiful than the original. The philosophy behind it is to value the brokenness and repair as part of the object's history, rather than seeing it as something to disguise. In contrast to Western philosophy, which strives for perfection and looks to hide brokenness, kintsugi acknowledges the brokenness and then pieces it back together into something beautiful. Elsa Kirsten Peters, Zoe Cooley, and Sharlisa Davis are all members of the group Palouse Advocates on Mental Illness. Elsa Kirsten Peters has a PhD in geology and is sometimes known as the Rock Doc. Sharlisa Davis is active in a number of groups that advocate and serve adults with mental illness. She'll tell us about one of them, Wellness Recovery Action Planning, which is a peer support group. As for the wonderful Zoe, she tells me, I am not a professional, just a forever advocate regarding mental illness concerns. She is too modest.
Thank you for asking us to speak to you today. I am here as an example of the fact that a person can have severe mental illness but be high functioning, at least off and on. My diagnosis is schizoaffective disorder. It's a cross between schizophrenia, including psychosis, and bipolar disorder. I've been hearing things since I was in junior high, and occasionally I have visual hallucinations as well. I've been hospitalized many times. I live with the delusion that there are rattlesnakes on the floor around me, an idea that can torture me, especially at night. There were rattlesnakes just in front of Krista Kramer's feet as I was sitting there, because I feel a little stress about talking to you all. I now take 2 antipsychotic medications, one of which costs the earth, both of which will harm my physical health in the long run, neither of which entirely stops the psychoses from happening. I take them because I'm between a rock and a hard place. I would be much worse off without the drugs, so I accept the risks of taking them long term. I also take lithium each day. It may wear out my kidneys, but I take it because it eliminates about 90% of my suicidal thinking. Finally, I take an antidepressant. So there are 4 drugs in my daily cocktail of psych meds. I've been hospitalized 4 times in the psychiatric ward of St. Joe's in Lewiston. Before that, I was hospitalized many times in a hospital run by Harvard University, where I earned my doctorate. This brings me to the high-functioning part of the picture. I was a serious student, graduating with highest honors in geology from Princeton University. Then I went to Harvard for my PhD. I taught 100 and 200 level classes at WSU, and I've written and seen published 8 books on topics that range from geology to global climate to Quaker thought and practice. I took early retirement at age 55 because of my increasing cognitive problems, including short-term memory loss. The memory issues may be because of damage to the brain from mania and psychoses, or they may be a side effect of the drugs that I take for my mental illness. Again, I'm between a rock and a hard place. Sometimes a good friend asks me what can be done to be useful to the mentally ill. All I know is that the love and support from friends and family is crucial for me to stay alive. Lithium is great, and the antipsychotics help, but they need to be complemented by the warm embrace of being a valued part of community. If you know someone having psychiatric troubles, talk to them and make it clear they can call on you. Go to Lewiston and visit your friend on the locked ward. It's an experience worth having. Talk to my brother and sister-in-law, Nils Peterson and Krista Kramer, about what it's like down there if you want to learn from their experiences of visiting me over the years. The worst hell I've seen in the psych ward is people who are there for perhaps 2 weeks and have no visitors. Don't let that happen to people you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. You are an inspiration. My name is Zoe Cooley. Nancy Nelson suggested that I speak about how one may achieve mental health when dealing with a mental illness diagnosis. Big topic. I can share my experience as my son Dell's mother. He was eventually diagnosed with slow-onset chronic schizophrenia in the mid-1970s after he could no longer handle attending 10th grade. Only after learning much more about this devastating illness did we understand why he had had terrible, frightening visual hallucinations as a preschooler. My son's illness and the resulting experiences for him and his family had both unique and universal qualities related to his diagnosis. There are multiple individual reactions to the various medications and social interventions treatment. Age of onset, availability of treatment, attitudes about mental illness, stigma are some of the factors in play. Now, I need to point out that diagnosis and treatment may occur more promptly nowadays than it did for my son. No one in this region was qualified to diagnose and treat his condition. Now, medications have greatly improved since the 70s, and there's better understanding that the severe and persistent mental illnesses, including schizophrenia, clinical depression, the bipolar illnesses, are diseases of the brain, although one can still run into denial of that science in some sectors. Bootstrapping your way out really doesn't work for the vast majority of people with these illnesses. They are no-fault diseases. In the beginning, for Dell and our family, it was chaos, with what appeared to be acting out, running away, ramming around the house all night long, or withdrawing. He was not the person we thought we knew. He was in and out of Eastern State Hospital, placements in group homes, living with us sometimes or with a foster parent, in apartments, getting into trouble with the law, just not able to take care of himself. And this phase lasted about 10 years. It took me longer than I cared to admit to realize that we were in for a long haul and that his illness was devastating for him. So how did Dell get to that better place? Not cured, but in what we now call recovery. My look back spans more than 40 years until his death in 2015 His heavy cigarette smoking strained his lungs and eventually his heart. Psychiatrists, counselors, case managers, and community-based rehabilitation social workers and Dell's primary physician were a big part of his life while I searched for knowledge and understanding. Dell and I received a lot of help and patience, especially from my husband, my parents, and some dear friends. Plus, family support groups were tremendously helpful in sharing concerns, strategies, and sorrows. Fortunately, except for nicotine, Dell did not get into self-medication with alcohol or street drugs, which would have made his life even more complicated. The basic support of the Social Security Disability Insurance Program, Medicaid, Medicare was crucial. Excellent placements in semi-independent group homes, first in Lewiston and then in Alliance House here in Moscow, helped him develop living skills. After the FDA approved the use of a more effective antipsychotic medication, Dell's functioning improved tremendously. Eventually, he moved into an apartment with Section 8 support, and he even held some part-time jobs for a number of years. Those jobs provided community involvement and learning, plus dollars to support his treasured 1979 Chevy Camper Special pickup. Family and friends received an update on the fix-it-up improvements via his annual Christmas card photo of Dell and his wheels. While he readily learned to drive, passing the written test was a challenge. He participated in family gatherings, planned airline trips to visit family, kept his checkbook to the penny, used his cell phone, had his Christmas shopping done in early December, enjoyed daily jaunts around Moscow, in the pickup, of course, and planned pizza parties for his friends on his birthday. Our last road trip together, destination Astoria, Oregon, was the best. Participating in the new peer recovery support group, RAP, every week provided learning, friendships, and self-affirmation for Dell. Sharlisa Davis introduced that program in Moscow about 5 years ago. I'm pleased that Sharlisa is here to share her story and her leadership of wellness recovery action planning. And we will have more information in the social hall. Thank you. Sharlisa.
Wow, this is a great crowd. This is wonderful. Some of you may know me already, but some of you may not. I'd like to thank God, my Father in heaven, for getting this program off to a great start, and for Krista and Zoe, Peggy, and the entire group that worked in this. Oh, the children's program, that was wonderful too. So thank you for everyone that participated in getting this off. To tell my story, I am a person in long-term mental health recovery. Am I being too loud? Okay. It's good. All right. Because I'm about to tell my story.
Should she be a little farther away from it? Is that?
Just a little bit?
Yeah, you can.
Right here?
Back up a little.
Back it up. Okay. My diagnoses are severe depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, schizoaffective, and some anxiety disorders, just to name a few. My name is Sharlisa Davis. I am a person first. I am not my diagnosis. I've been on all kinds of meds and seen many doctors. I had doctors that took the time to listen to me in the beginning, and some not. I came across doctors that did not communicate with me as far as my treatment. I felt the need to understand my diagnosis and the troubles going on in my head. I went to support groups, but was not clear on why I was there. The first time I attended a support group was approximately 3 years when I was sitting there, but I didn't even participate or speak. I only showed up. But again and again in my life, I did not give up on myself. I continued to keep my doctor's appointments. And it is difficult to step out alone and say, I need help. Sadly, I did not have that support from my family members, but I did use self-advocacy to push forward with the doctor's suggestions. I knew that it wasn't necessarily my fault or my family's fault, but I just knew that something was wrong and I needed to get some help. It was I started off maybe around age 16 when I started noticing things were not right with me, and I had a lot of confusing thoughts that was not clear on who I was and how do I grow up to be a young woman. I was very confused about that and wanted to end my life. I needed help. My family made comments that were not helpful. I felt alone in a dark cloud, or the princess in the fog. I had to come to a conclusion that I would talk to my primary doctor about the things I was feeling. I knew I had a purpose in life. I knew that. But what was it? There was a huge barrier not knowing who, what, or how to just be me. Eventually, my therapist saw how well I was doing in my therapy sessions and invited me to participate in this consumer, patient, peer. They don't really know what to call us, right? A consumer or a peer. But I was chosen to participate in this study program, and I went from taking the class to this program to being certified to teach the class. And then when I first moved to this area, to the Palouse area, I wondered why there was AA and NA support groups. They were free to attend. But why did I have to pay a copay to belong to a support group for my mental illness? This made it difficult to work on my own recovery and gain support to make those social connections, which are vital to my stability. I strongly believe these peer support groups should be free and they should be open to the population as well. Aren't AA and NA groups free to attend? Yes, they are. Therefore, I advocated for this to happen in this area. Proudly, I can mention that there are free support groups for people with mental illness now in this area, such as the Palouse Advocates of Mental Illness in Pullman, the Lata Alliance on Mental Illness, there's family support groups, there's RAP, and the Recovery Center, the Recovery Center. I started giving my personal time and part of myself to give back and share with others. By sharing and giving back, this is a huge part of my recovery process. I needed to develop my own support in this local area. Working with my doctors, educating myself about my meds and their different side effects, understanding the diagnosis and the support and love of others have kept me in my recovery. Through this time, I have lived my life the best I could, sometimes one day at a time, not knowing what my future would entail. Thankfully, I have been helped by different approaches of wellness. Slowly, I continue in life participating in the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, which is WRAP, in which I now facilitate on Wednesdays right here in the city of Moscow at the 1912 Center, right across the street there in the Friendship Hall room. This peer support group focuses on, what does it focus on? It focuses on hope. If you can't read this, this will be downstairs for you too. It focuses on hope, personal responsibility, education, self-advocacy, and how to develop a support system. It helps to identify your wellness toolbox, your daily maintenance plan, identifying triggers, and what to do about it once you identify those triggers. It helps you to identify early warning signs and what to do once you do identify those early warning signs. It helps when things are breaking down, and what do you do once that happens? And also a crisis plan. A crisis plan we develop when you're feeling well, not when you're in a crisis. So that's something you work on in WRAP. And then a post-crisis plan. Once you're out of crisis, then what else are your needs? What else can your support system do for you? And it's good to think about these things ahead of time, not when you're in the midst of trouble. And we'll have these things downstairs for you to look at as well. So what is recovery? What does it look like? There's different ways to recovery. There's not one road. Everyone has their own way to recovery. I can tell you it's truly rewarding to see people in recovery and their lives being changed so that they can be a success and be a part of society. It is very rewarding in seeing that. An uplifting saying that I like to use is, keep working on your recovery. Don't give up. The Princess and the Fog story was a great illustration. There's always going to be challenges, or fog, or cloudy. I mentioned about the cloud in my life. There's always going to be something that comes to distract you, or that challenge that comes in your life. But you just keep working on your recovery. Don't give up. It is important to know that your way and what you're doing is just part of you, and you'll get there. Sometimes you can't do it alone. And you can tell by the gathering today that you are not alone. We are all together. And I think there was a hymn that we sung together. What was it? The choir did that. It said, here we gather, or was it alone? You are not alone. That's what it was. You are not alone. And there was a hymn earlier that here we have together. That's right. That was it. I got it. Yes. I like to integrate part of your service into my program, because it's so important to know that how important you are. How important you are. And how important you are. And how important you are. We are all in this together, and we can do it together. And I'm so proud that man, they listened to me 5 years ago. And we have a recovery program here in this area that's free for people to attend. And I don't have to have an issue with drugs or alcohol to be a part of this program. I can just have a mental illness and seek support, because I need support. And so may you, and you, and you. So thank you for listening to me today. We will be downstairs to answer questions. We'll be downstairs to listen to your comments and answer questions. And I just want you to say that mental illness is not a choice. We are not seeking attention. It's not a crime either. We are not violent. I'm not lazy either. It's just a mental illness. I'm not making an excuse, and I'm not joking about it. Mental illness is a part of me. But again, remember, I'm Sharlisa Davis. I am not just schizoaffective or anxiety. I am Sharlisa Davis first. Thank you very much.